For a while, Sam Bankman-Fried was the most important person in the world of crypto. I'm Jacob Shamsian, I'm a legal correspondent at Insider, and I've been covering the Sam Bankman-Fried trial. SBF founded two billion-dollar companies. One is called FTX, which is a cryptocurrency exchange. It's kind of like the New York Stock Exchange, but for cryptocurrency. One is called Alameda Research, which is a cryptocurrency hedge fund, basically where, he bought and sold and made investments using cryptocurrency. After he founded FTX and Alameda, and they became very successful, they eventually moved to the Bahamas, where at that point, he used Alameda Research to buy a $35 million penthouse, which has become a big deal in this criminal trial. He and 10 other people, employees of FTX and Alameda, and their significant others, all kind of lived in this big mansion. Sam has kind of put out this image of himself as someone who did not care about the finer things in life. He famously seldom cut his hair. He wore cargo shorts. He wore t-shirts that did not look very clean and did not really fit him. But prosecutors have said this is sort of just an image for himself. In reality, he did want to amass enormous wealth, and he wanted it for himself. One example of where this came from the trial is Caroline Ellison, who was Sam's on and off girlfriend for a while, and who was also the CEO of his hedge fund, Alameda Research. She testified that when they moved to the Bahamas, Sam bought them luxury cars for each of them, and then a little while later he said, you know what, let's get a Toyota Corolla and a Honda Civic because that's better for our image. This all fell apart in November of 2022. FTX customers had gotten the sense that something was wrong, and they started withdrawing their money all at once. There just wasn't enough money in FTX's accounts to fulfill those withdrawals. And at that point, prosecutors really started circling and to bring charges. So Sam was arrested in the Bahamas in December of 2022. He was extradited to the US. His lawyers didn't fight his extradition because they said, he didn't do anything wrong. He's happy to go to court and explain himself. After he was arrested, he lived with his parents under house arrest. After the judge found he was witness tampering with one of the chief witnesses in the trial, Caroline Ellison, he remanded him to jail, and he's been commuting from a jail in Brooklyn to this courthouse in Manhattan every day of the trial. Prosecutors basically say that the customers who are using FTX, their money was going to Alameda Research, as opposed to being safe on the FTX platform that they can use to trade. And Alameda was using it as it saw fit, basically as its own piggy bank to make investments that ultimately benefited Sam, because Sam owned Alameda. Prosecutors charged him with defrauding FTX customers, saying that they couldn't withdraw their own money out of their FTX accounts. And they also charged him with defrauding investors into Alameda and FTX by not disclosing the secret relationship between the two companies. And the other charge is money laundering, basically saying that he took money from FTX customers and used it for purposes that otherwise would have seemed legitimate, like repaying lenders and making it other sorts of investments that ultimately benefited him. The structure of the fraud is a little bit complicated. Basically, Alameda had an account on FTX, but it had a line of credit that went up to $65 billion. So it can effectively just take out up to, theoretically, $65 billion and use it to whatever degree they saw fit, and the internal alarm bells on FTX wouldn't, stop them. According to Sam, the liabilities never rose above $2 or $3 billion. Caroline Ellison, the CEO of Alameda, who testified against him in court, claimed that the number reached as high as about $10 or $11 billion. Ultimately, by the end of it, Alameda Research was about $10 billion in the red. And prosecutors say that this was ultimately FTX customer money that just should have been there but wasn't. Sam's defense is that if you look at the FTX terms of service, it does say that on rare, extremely rare occasions, everyone who used the margin trading service could suffer socialized losses, meaning their accounts could be drained to cover other big losses of other users. Sam Bankman-Fried took the really risky and unusual step of testifying in his own criminal case. It's not something that any defendant has to do, but he decided it was worth the risk. And when he was questioned by his own lawyers, he was very forthcoming. He talked about how he built FTX and Alameda into two multi-billion-dollar businesses. But under questioning from prosecution, he seemed that he couldn't remember anything. He answered, "I don't recall," 140 times. He would take long pauses and be like, "I'm not sure about that." He definitely was more evasive, and I do think that the jury could tell that. There were a bunch of times where prosecutors did seem to nail him on certain questions. His lawyers are also saying, this isn't a person who's, a fraudster. He did legitimately build $2 billion companies, and he just made mistakes. He made bad business decisions. He took risks that were ill-advised, but at the end of the day, that is not fraud. That's just bad business decisions. So we heard testimony from members of SBF's inner circle in this trial. Gary Wang was one of Sam's closest friends for a long time. They went to MIT together, they lived together, and he was an executive at FTX and also owned a chunk of Alameda Research. And he was also basically was a lead programmer at the same time. So he was one of the people who developed this so-called backdoor in FTX that allowed Alameda to take a lot of funds. Nishad's role was also as a programmer, head programmer for FTX. He also participated in the straw donation scheme, where basically they're taking money and giving it to Democrats, Republicans, people who SBF wanted to influence crypto regulation in the United States. In addition to his criminal trial, Sam Bankman-Fried has a lot of legal problems. He is being sued by 2 regulatory agencies. There's a massive bankruptcy of FTX, which is very messy. There are other lawsuits against him, against members of his family, against other FTX entities. So he's gonna have to deal with that for a long time.